Welcome to the Symphony Podcast. I'm your host, co-host, Kyle Huber, and I'm here with Matthew Callens, calling in from San Diego, and I'm up in Seattle doing the usual virtual call today. And we've got a cool topic I think could open the door to a lot of different conversations in different areas, but essentially talking about how developing your character and being essentially just being a good person in the long run is, and how that impacts your career success and achievement in the external world. So Matthew, why don't you frame this conversation up for us, and we'll go from there.
Well, the thing that made me start thinking about this in the first place, I feel like I've thought about it kind of a lot actually over the past couple of years, just because as I make my way in the business world, I meet all types of different personalities who are, representing all different levels of success as well. So I meet a lot of really cool people who are smart and genuine and kind and humble. And oftentimes their businesses are doing really well. But then I also meet people who on paper, they're doing really well. Their business is financially stable. They're profiting. They have a huge corporation that's doing global sales or whatever they're doing. But the people at the top are just kind of assholes. And so it made me think on the concept of like, what is the point of being a good person when it comes to opportunity? And then also like, what does that look like in the longevity of success? And kind of the ultimate conclusion that I came to was, that opportunity itself is not always going to recognize character. So like if you just have a random opportunity come down the pipeline, like it might go to the person who cheated his way to the top, or who stepped on other people's toes, or who, wasn't acting virtuously, but just because of the circumstances was the first runner for the opportunity that came about. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to find long-term success within that opportunity. And so I think opportunity doesn't recognize character, but the longevity of success is almost dependent on it. And so that's kind of the angle that I want to talk about this from, and then just kind of also go into that topic of like, yeah, maybe nice. I don't know. There's that saying that like nice guys finish last, and like it from some perspectives, maybe that's true. And, like the asshole might rise to the top the fastest, but that's not necessarily what you should be aiming for. And just because I think like everything else, there's a balance that's required, and humility is a big part of that. And your own character development is a big part of that. And so if you work on yourself first, you can bring that version of yourself forward into every opportunity that you have, and ultimately give yourself a better shot at having long lasting success with that.
I love it, man. I firmly believe that some of these soft skills, like we've talked about some of the key traits of a good leader. And when I ask myself, what type of person would I want to work for or work with? It's not somebody who, cheated their way to the top or figured out, a workaround. I did work for a guy like this. I've talked a little bit about it, a filmmaker, and he told me something actually that was valuable, but it kind of goes to this like yin and yang of this whole conversation, where he said, Kyle, when you are working on a project, you're going to come up against a wall, and you can try and go through that wall, or you can go over it, under it, or around the side of it, essentially. Like his perspective on making films, he was a filmmaker, right? So he was basically always trying to snake his way around. Like the wall is there for a reason. The portal to submit your film or whatever it might be, like it's there because like there's a system in which like everybody can submit their stuff fairly and be judged based on merit. But like this type of person, and I don't mean to slander him too hard, so I won't say his name, but he's the type that just wanted to cut corners. And I saw how that led to short-term success. We got this film off the ground. We got, I think it was like 45, 55 grand with like basically just kind of like bullshitting our way through like these proposals, like throwing together budgets that didn't even make sense, adding stuff to the budget. Cause like in the film industry, a lot of the profit that these producers make is from margins on the budget items. So like I saw he was paying me $5,000 for a co-producer spot, and he was charging, he was putting in the budget for 10 grand. So he was stuff like that. I saw how that did not work out in the long run. So I'm still like open to this like valuable concept that this guy gave me, which is like always try and find a better way than just like bashing your head against the wall. But that being said, sometimes like just getting in line, waiting your turn, being patient, I think is a big theme in this conversation for me, because if you're not patient, it's going to be very difficult to maintain good character. You're going to be looking for those like cheats, or how can I network with this person who can help me? Like we've talked about how that doesn't lead anywhere good. So um, those are a few thoughts. I agree with you that humility is a key element of somebody that I'd want to work for and with. And yeah, I think this is just like a conversation that's encouraging to people to like just keep being yourself, because like I think most people are really good people. There's a few bad apples out there, and there's a lot of people that are right on the margin where it's like, hey, maybe if they were influenced, like they were surrounded by people that wanted to cut corners, they would cut corners. But if they
Right.
hear this podcast and they're like, hey, you can use those concepts and still do the right thing. So
Yeah, also, and it
yeah.
gives you a reason kind of why to live intentionally every single day too, because like you talked about, everything translates over. Like even if it's like a slow release, like if whatever is going on within your internal space is going to translate over into everything that you do. So whether you're the owner of a company or even you're just a worker within a company, like if you are cutting corners in your own life, or if you're, like excusing yourself for bad behavior in your own life, like that will translate over into the work that you do, into the relationships that you have, and just like your entire external physical reality. And so I think that's reason enough, at least in my mind, to have self-discipline and do these things every single day that are kind of pushing you in the direction that you want to go and making you the best person that you can be, and just kind of like doing those things that you said that when you think about it are the things that are going to be good for you, and like good for you in the sense that they help you show up your best in the world. And because then that will translate over into every single thing that you do, including your work. So and I was actually thinking about it from a business standpoint as well, because I had the thought of like long what makes something successful over a long period of time, and ultimately it comes down to the people within it and the culture that's created because of it. And if you are at the head of that like you can't create a positive culture with happy people if everybody hates the person who's at the top. Like in order to create a positive culture, like people need to feel like they're adding value. They need to feel like they have a similar vision to everyone else that's around them, and they're all kind of working towards a common goal. But if people are talking behind the leader, behind their back, like that creates a sickness within the culture that maybe over the slow release of time, like it just eats away at what it could have been. And I think that's a good way to look at this too, is like with the video thing, or with the guy that you were talking about. It's like you saw how the shortcomings in his character and in his personality ultimately made the film like not as good as it could have been.
Oh, the film didn't even get made, bro.
Well, there you go. Yeah. But even the
He
process, right? Like,
essentially alienated himself from everybody on the production. There was almost a straight up mutiny. Like the rest of the crew got together and were like, this guy's like literally not doing anything. He was like, anyways, yeah. So just to like give you the outcome there, it was like the film has not been made. The guy's still sucking money out of everybody involved, and
yeah.
I have distanced myself as far as
I
possible.
also I also think this is a reminder to people too, just to like not get discouraged if you see people that you like don't think are emulating like a virtuous character. If you see them quote unquote progressing in their
Mhm.
professional life, like don't get discouraged by that, just because. And this is something that Chase Jarvis talks about a lot too, though, just how opportunities are always coming. And so like don't look sideways and worry about what people on your left and on your right are doing. Just work on yourself and focus on seizing opportunities as they arise, because they will. And if you keep looking at the ones that have passed you by, like you're never going to see the ones that are coming right in front of you.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. There's one story I heard. I think my dad told it to me, but where it was a consulting company, and they would interview pretty rigorously top candidates from the biggest best schools, whatnot, like to get an interview with like a McKinsey or a Bain. Like it's not easy. And one of the things that they would do is they would take the interviewee out on like a lunch little outing, and they would just watch how they interact with the bus driver that they go on the bus with the waitress, the waiter. Did they say please and thank you? Did they look them in the eye? Did they just pretend like they are less valuable of a human being than them? Because we've all seen that like kind of stereotype where it's like you think you're this hotshot business guy, and so you show up to lunch and you're not even looking at the waiter, and like you're just super focused on the interview and it's all about you. But what you don't realize is that these people are literally grading you on how you interact. And so that was kind of like the last step in this interview process. And I'm botching it because I wish I knew the organization, but it's kind of just it's like, you can study your whole life and get the best scores on tests, but if you don't just like say please and thank you to the bus driver, you might not get the job. Like that's a cool concept. Like I really love the fact that that exists out there. I wish more people did interviews like that. I think it would build better culture in organizations. And yeah, to your point, like where like the leader matters, like also the people at the bottom that are joining in matter, right?
100%. Yeah. So like be kind to everyone too, because everyone's always fighting their own battles, and you never know who's listening, who's watching.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another cool thing too, I think, about just reasons to develop character and to do good in the world, because you never know how far your influence is going to go. Like, you know, and you might not even be thinking about it, but if you're just bringing your kind, genuine self throughout the world, like you might have a monumental impact on someone just by having a friendly conversation with them and showing them that that's a way that people can show up in the world. And maybe they just came off of like a month or a year of just dealing with shitty, angry, like malintented people. And so it's like, that's a reason, like you can be putting, I don't know, that's just a reason to like show up in a kind way in the world. I feel like it's
Yeah.
just because, and I've been impacted by that too. You know, like I've been in times where I'm just in a super negative mind state, or like I've been fucked over by someone in the business world, or just like starting to lose faith in humanity. And then I'll take a walk, and literally like a smile and a hello from a stranger will just like put me right back in the mindset that I need to be, and realize that, you know, there's plenty of bullshit out there, but there's also really good, cool people. And I think whatever you are representing, you create more of that in the world. And so it's like, why be a good person? Because you're creating more love in the world. And it's like, if your existence is causing someone else's existence to be worse, like then you're spreading suffering basically. But if you're being kind and you're being loving and supportive and generous and thoughtful, then it's like that will just expand from you, and you'll spread that every single where you go. But it works in both directions, obviously.
Yeah. Do you think, I've got a question for you. Do you think being a good person is something you have to like actively try and do? Because one of the thoughts I have here is when you're working on something you're passionate about or doing what you love, you're going to show up as the best version of yourself, or at least a better version. So it comes more naturally. So when you talk about like actively being a better person, like what does that look like to you in comparison to just like being your best self
I
because you're
think
doing what
it's
you want?
I think you're right. Like I think it's kind of the same thing, because it's like when you feel fulfilled by what you're doing, and if you're working towards something that's like challenging and you feel like you're progressing every single day, like you start to understand that like your ability to do that stems in a lot of ways from your ability to just show up as your genuine self and like have a positive mindset, and like and do the things well that you know how to do. And so like then it just puts you in a mindset where you're like, you almost can't be like
Mm-hmm.
rude or mean or like angry or I, I don't know. So I just feel like they kind of go hand in hand almost, because
Mm-hmm.
like if you don't take a positive mindset to something that, even if it is like what you genuinely love to do,
Mm-hmm.
like it kind of it ruins the output of whatever you're doing. And so I think you realize that, and then you expand on that concept to a larger level, and then you take that into your everyday interactions and just kind of like, yeah, how you show up in the world.
Another kind of concept that I want to drop by you is that the fact that character is not permanent and that people can evolve.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 21st century here, we've got these social media platforms where when you write something down, or even without social media, like I was um, not as pleasant of a human being, let's just say. I would say my character has improved since high school, middle school times. And that's
100%.
just as I've grown up, become more conscious, been able to reflect on how I treat people. And yeah, I think overall I have improved. But
Definitely.
it can be very difficult, let's say, for somebody who didn't see that improvement, or they don't know that somebody else has evolved or changed. Like,
Right.
I guess it's just okay. Like, something I've thought about is, like, especially with this conversation, like, who the fuck am I to talk about good character? Like, I'm not like saying I have great character or something like that. I try and be as good of a person, but I don't know. It's just kind of this thought of kind of just like, you can be a better person. It's okay that in the past you were like a piece of shit to somebody, or like you stole shit from the grocery store, or I don't know. I've got plenty of things that I could disclose that are just like downright like, I wish I never did those things, like
Yeah.
keying a car, dude, like stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
like, and yeah, I don't know. I just think that, like, knowing that, like, I used to even throw trash out the window in high school, and now I look at that, I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, I was just not who I am today. And I think this is an important thing to bring up, because we are all flawed human beings. Like, we can talk
Yeah.
about having good character, but we all do some shit that we should not share. Like, everybody has done
Totally.
stuff like that. So,
So I think here's the reminder too, is that, like, yes, all of that's true. That's built into like the human experience, is that people do shitty things and people do good things. But like the main point is that we only have the present, and we are faced with constant decision making of how we want to act and how we want to represent ourselves. And so that's the cool part about character, is that, like, yeah, it's not something where it's like, oh yeah, I got it, like, good to go now. I can just
mhm.
do whatever. Like, I can start acting however I want now because I already developed that thing. Like, it's an ongoing game. It's an ongoing challenge, just like everything, just like our health, just like our fitness, just like our intelligence. Like, it doesn't ever reach a level where it just caps off and it stops. Like, you
Right.
have to keep practicing it, and you have to be able to make constant decisions throughout the day to choose to elevate yourself to that higher vibrational standpoint. And it's always a decision, like, it's never just like you wake up and it happens.
Mhm.
Like, it always takes, it takes work. Like, it takes intentionality and focusing on those things that you want, and in the way that you want to act and be received by people. And that is the self-discipline thing. And it's like, that's kind of like how you develop character, I think, is by having discipline with your own self work, basically. So, like, do the work on yourself first, and then show up for the world in the best way that you can, because you've done that work.
To that
And then the rest is
exact,
easy,
yeah,
right? Like, and
yes.
then yeah.
Yeah, to that exact point, I wrote here, like, your boundaries don't necessarily mean that you're not showing good character. So you can't be everything to everybody. Like, you can't be a supportive friend to every single person that you know. It's just not possible. Like, you can try, and at the end of the day, you have to prioritize the people and the activities that really matter to you most, and yourself. So that's something that I've realized a lot of people struggle with, is like, someone asks you, hey, what are you doing tomorrow night? I've got this thing. It's important to me. Can you come? And you're like, you know what? Like, I was planning on just like reading a book and relaxing and like resetting. And
Yep.
that doesn't sound like a good excuse. So that person might perceive that as like, oh, they're just like prioritizing themselves. They're selfish.
Yeah.
But to me, look, to exactly your point here, if you do those activities that make you the person that's going to be the best you can be, you're going to actually show up for that person, if they might not even know it, in a better way. So
Right. And if you can always answer to yourself, then I think you're in good standing too. And a lot of that also comes, like, I feel like we teach others how to treat us by the way that we like treat them and communicate with them. So it's like, if you want that person to understand why it's valuable for you to have to take that night to, like, read or do whatever you need to do, just have a night on your own, like, there's ways to say that without being like, hey, no, I'm just gonna like chill on my own, because then that
mhm.
person will be like, whoa, what the hell. You could literally say something like, hey, I've been feeling like really kind of stressed out, and I was really looking forward to having that night to, like, do some self work, some read a little bit, and kind of just like think about a lot of things that are going on right now. And
Yeah.
like, I feel like that would be received much differently than, oh no, I can't, like, I was planning on just chilling on my own. So I
Mhm.
feel like we do have the ability to help people come to the same understandings that and we talked about this before we even got on the show, like the ability to communicate effectively. And like, we were talking about it from this podcast standpoint of like, doing this podcast every week creates a space for us to have these conversations that we probably wouldn't be having otherwise, right? So it makes us think about these things, and then it makes us be able to communicate effectively about these things, which hopefully that we do. But yeah, I just think the way that we communicate in the world is also a direct reflection of what's going on inside of our heads and inside of our internal reality. Basically, it's all
100%.
connected.
100%. I echo your take there on communication, because the people with the best character, they still have to have difficult, challenging conversations. They have to tell their subordinate that they're not performing well, or they have to have a conversation with their boss when they're not performing well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even if they have great character, I think what distinguishes somebody is their ability to communicate, because two people might have the same like intentions. One person comes across a little blunt and a little bit raw, or maybe doesn't understand the other person's perspective enough to I forget what there's a term for this in uh, linguistics. Basically, it's like you use words to like dampen a more intense message. So
Yeah.
instead of saying, hey man, could you like, hey man, please bring, or like you could just say, hey, bring the basketball to the game. You could say, hey, is it possible if you're still at home to grab that basketball? If not, I can swing back. Like, no big deal. That's excessive. Obviously, you don't need to say four different, dampening statements, but essentially you can have the same message to somebody. You can say, I didn't like how you like acted in this conversation, or I don't understand this perspective. But I might be wrong, and maybe I'm just like totally, misunderstanding. So here, like, could you re-explain it? Like,
Right.
coming at people with a positive intention and using language in a way that makes your messaging not sound harsh is critical to
Definitely.
fulfillment and longevity and success, in my opinion.
Definitely. And to your last point, just about how, like even if you do have good character, like hard conversations are going to happen, difficult things are going to come up. And that's whether you have good character or bad character, right? Like difficult situations are going to come up regardless of who you are. And so a big part of this too is like, how do you show up for those difficult things? Because someone who's had self-discipline, worked on themselves, worked through multiple challenging personal problems, shows up to a block in the road with confidence and like he might even receive that information of like, hey, you haven't been doing that well on this, and instead of being like, oh well, I need to figure out how I can like take some shortcuts and like get around this obstacle, or like see what I can do here to like step on other people's toes and like make sure that my name is like back in the green zone instead of the red zone. Whereas like someone who has done that work, receives that information, communicates effectively through it, and then wants to problem solve and like find an innovative solution for that. And so then if you look at those like challenging points as like as a track, and the people are just moving, it's like the person who takes that on, finds an innovative solution around it without stepping on anybody else's toes, like in the long run makes it further than the person who tries to take shortcuts, tries to step on other people, like because that I think moves you sideways. Even if it feels like you're moving forward, in some ways it throws a cog in the system to the point where it's not working quite as effectively as it would if you took the positive um, approach to the issue, if that makes sense.
I like that analogy. Yeah. And, keeping the track smooth and no nails on that thing, no concrete bricks in the middle of it. It'll be
No,
good.
and like not doing things that are going to come back to bite you, because
Mm.
I'm a huge believer in like the energy you put out comes back to you. And so I firmly believe that if you take shortcuts, and that if you wrong other people, even if you have short-term gain, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass in ways that will bring you way further back than it would have taken you to just do things the right way in the first place.
I think one final take on this topic is that kind of the definition of what success is different for everybody. We've talked about that, but to me, success is not just financial. And to a lot of people, actually, there's some people out there where it's like financial success is success. Like those things are
Right.
synonymous. That's clearly not the case here. And I think that's just a reminder when we talk about like longevity and success, it's like, how many people do you impact positively? That's
Yep.
success. Like, how many times do someone like Kid Brian reach out and say, hey man, I listen to your episodes every Wednesday, love them, love what you guys do? It's like, okay, this podcast is successful. You know, that's to me, we got to keep doing that instead of be like, oh, it's we're trading all this time and we're not making any money. Like we should do something that's more financially profitable, and we would lose the like to me almost infinite value in impacting somebody positive. Like you can't really put a dollar amount on changing somebody's life in a positive direction.
Agreed.
And yeah, so anyways, just a thought like when you do think about longevity of success, not just thinking about it from a financial standpoint.
Absolutely. Mostly from a personal growth standpoint, in my mind. And that includes your own happiness too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
way you make other people feel, your own personal happiness. And that's kind of it, honestly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Last thing is like you talked about how all we have is the present moment in relation to this conversation. I go to bed every night. I kind of evaluate my day. Like, okay, I woke up. I said I was going to do this many hours of work, and I was going to go biking and ride this many miles, or see my family or not, or whatever. Go to this appointment. Did I do those things or not? Sometimes actually, most of the time, I don't do exactly what I planned to do that day, but I'm still able to say, okay, there's a reason why I did that. I had to shift to do this podcast or do something else, and I put something else on the back burner. So just like being okay with
Yeah.
not living up to every single plan that you make and just being willing to shift and pivot, I
Right.
think is
But
also
also
pretty helpful.
taking mental inventory and like having that, and like having something to basically compare your day-to-day activities to, right? So you like have this idea of who you would like to be, the goals you set out for yourself, and then you have that vision as kind of like a point of comparison for how your
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day life and actions are going. That's good.
Money. All right, man. Let's wrap this one up. I think we kept it under 30 today. Um, and yeah, we've got a couple guests coming on. We've got a lot of stuff. Symphony has been, I was just talking about how it's summer up here in Seattle, and so doing like extra podcasting is like not really my my favorite thing to do. So that's why my Adventure Creator podcast has been basically on hold, but we're still doing Symphony weekly. And yeah, just excited to keep collaborating with more people. Maybe you can speak a little bit to the updates on your end, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, let's see. We got a couple of guests lined up to come on the show. One is a filmmaker, documentary maker. She's awesome. She's going to be a really fun guest. I've learned a lot from her, and so I'm excited to have her on the show. The Kickstarter money got released, or it hasn't been released yet, but the campaign ended. We got fully funded. All of the products are on their way to our facility, and on September 1st, everybody will be getting the products that they pre-ordered through the Kickstarter. So within the next couple of months, you're going to see all of our products out there, probably on the internet, because we're going to be hitting e-commerce pretty hard. But also check us out at Seattle Bouldering Project, because I know we have shreddables there. So if you're one of those members, go check us out there. But either way, we will have shreddables, shroomy, and root strength out in the public very soon. So I look forward
Heck
to it a
yeah.
lot.
As do I. Till next time, Matthew, good to talk to you. Signing out.